We've been told that fascism is a foreign-born ideology that spawned the political aspirations of Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. In fact, fascism has had a long history in America. If you've been paying attention at all to the healthcare debate, you'll note that this is a power grab to pull more and more Americans under the direction and control of the state. Of course, this has been happening for a long time in America. The government at the national level creates a crisis and then comes back and says they need to avert the crisis. And the way to avert the crisis, of course, is to give more control to the state. Today, we are used to this idea that the government is mixed in with the private sphere. And since many, many people are also dependent upon the state and need the productive members of society, you can see where we are headed. I think Greece, modern-day Greece, is a good example of where America could be heading. 52% of the workers in Greece are work for the government. Here in the United States, government jobs used to be secure jobs, and you get a pension at the end, and it was a moderate income. Now, government workers make much more than those in the private sector, and because they have the power of the sword, they can force compliance in the area of employment, and because of the strong unions, government employees continually get raises. They are of the society in which we live and the workforce in which we live. You will find that government workers are almost the last to get laid off. This is certainly true in the educational realm, unless budget constraints are so severe that local municipalities just cannot fund them anymore. But at the federal level, it's almost impossible to get rid of a federal worker. Let me read a couple of quotations from you, if any of this sounds familiar. The first, from 1875, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, Karl Marx. Here's the President Obama spokesman, Robert Gibbs, who said the following on February 25th, 2010. It's a tax on insurance companies that offer Cadillac or, quite frankly, Rolls-Royce policy that, in essence, people don't need. So his argument was, look, there are people out there who are making all this money, and they have these Cadillac insurance policies. And what we need to do is to go in there and tax these Cadillac insurance policies. These people really don't need these policies, so it's okay to tax them. And so people don't really need this big house, and so we can go in there and tax that house more than we would tax someone else. These people don't need all this money, so we're going to tax their salaries more than we're going to tax someone else's, a progressive income tax. President Obama said, we've arrived at a juncture in our politics where reasonable efforts to update our regulations or make basic investments in our future are too often greeted with cries of government takeover or even socialism. And not only does that kind of rhetoric deny our history, it prevents us from asking hard questions about the right balance between the private and public sectors. And there you have it. I mean, this particular administration is socialistic. There is no doubt about it. And I know there are some pundits out there, Bill O'Reilly, who doesn't want to make that assessment that, oh, is he really a socialist? Yes, he's a socialist. He's not the only one. Many of the American people are socialists but have never admitted. If you ask people if socialism is good, I would say you get a lot of people who say, sure, it is. You get that for two reasons. Most people don't know the definition of socialism. A lot of them think, well, being a socialist means to be social. And on the other hand, you have people who believe that it's okay to tax the more prosperous members of society in order to help the less prosperous members of society. I've been working on an article right now. It's actually going to be a chapter in a book that I'm dealing with on the issue of property rights. And most people just don't, they would see it as to be wrong to come over in somebody's property and steal their furniture and take it away from them. They would say it was wrong to get some of their neighbors to come over and steal the furniture from their property. But they wouldn't see it was wrong in order to vote for people to go into political office to pass laws to take the property from a neighbor in order to make sure that they could, so that their children can go to school for free, for example. So you got 90-some% of the American people who send their children to public schools. They're really government schools, and they're using the taxing power of the state in order to get the state to come in, or mostly at the county level, to come in and take money from property owners so that they can get a cheaper rate for their children at the government school system. And so, in one sense, to say that, and not only does that kind of rhetoric deny our history, it doesn't deny our history, because we have been a socialistic, somewhat fascistic society for quite some time. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. There's a book that is written by Jonah Goldberg called Liberal Fascism. It's a real eye-opener. He writes, Woodrow Wilson revered Otto von Bismarck as much as Teddy Roosevelt or any of the other progressives did. Bismarck's motive was to forestall demands for more democracy by giving people the sort of thing they might ask for at the polls. His top-down socialism was a Machiavellian masterstroke because it made the middle class dependent upon the state. The middle class took away from this the lesson that enlightened government was not the product of democracy, but an alternative. As Wilson put it, the essence of progressivism was that the individual marry his interests to the state. And this is where we are today. We have many people in our nation who believe that the state should be more intrusive, should be involved in taking more income from the prosperous members of society and to redistribute it to the less prosperous. But what that does, of course, it takes away any initiative from the less prosperous to get themselves out of their less prosperous condition, because they know they're always going to be paid a particular wage or receive a particular benefit. It stymies creativity. And I mentioned Greece just a moment ago. What do you buy from Greece today? Not very much. And the reason is because the incentive to be an entrepreneur in Greece isn't there, because those who make a lot of money are then taxed by the state in order to pay for those people who are receiving state benefits. Right now, in an attempt to decrease the deficit in Greece, state workers, government workers are protesting. They don't want any cuts. If America goes that way, we will see the world collapse around us. William Shirer, in his book *The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich*, writes that Bismarck's policies gradually made the German people value security and political freedom and caused them to see in the state, however conservative, a benefactor and a protector. And between 1883 and 1889, Bismarck put through a program for Social Security far beyond anything known in other countries at the time. It included compulsory insurance for workers against old age, sickness, accident, and incapacity. And though it was organized by the state, it was financed by employers and employees. Now that sounds familiar. That is our modern-day Social Security system. And Otto von Bismarck was in the 19th century. And who modeled his socialistic policies on Bismarck's policies? It was Adolf Hitler. I studied Bismarck's socialist legislation in its intention, struggle, and success. And it was Hitler's Social Security policies and promises that got him elected to office. And FDR, he borrowed Bismarck's socialist agenda and created what is known as the Social Security system. Bismarck said that the state must take the matter in hand, since the state can most easily supply the requisite funds. It must provide them not as alms, but in fulfillment of the workers' right to look to the state where their own goodwill can achieve nothing more. Roosevelt and his admirers, there's a book by P.J. O'Brien called Forward with Roosevelt, and he links Bismarck's social policies with those of Roosevelt. The quotation by Bismarck might have been lifted out of a speech by President Roosevelt in 1936, but the Iron Chancellor uttered it in 1871. We are headed down the same road, and unless America comes to its senses and begins to say no to these draconian takeovers, in this case of the health care provisions of 1/6 of our economy, we will go down the same road as socialist Germany did, and who knows what will be waiting on the other side of it. We may be awaiting something that is a dire consequence to the freedom in the United States and freedom to those around the world.
For more related to today's topic, check out God versus Socialism, a biblical critique of the New Social Gospel. You will find it at AmericanVision.com.